Hi, this is Dave Perry, and you're watching Retro Gaming Revival live.
Good evening and welcome to another exciting edition of RGR Live. I'm your host, Dorbs, for this evening. Right, let's get cracking straight into it, shall we? So just a quick introduction. So who have we got with us tonight? We have a man who buys overpriced beers, just like Tony Adams. It's Nintendo.
Overpriced beers, I'll take it. That's probably one of the kinder ones I've had so far. Yeah, I'll take it.
Could have gone worse.
It could.
A man who normally runs the show, just like Paul Merson. It's All Elite Ryan.
Yeah, you could have chosen a Southampton player. Why did you go for a Portsmouth player? I'm disappointed. I am
just
disappointed.
thinking of Arsenal players, mate. And this one's sort of been ruined.
Yeah.
But we're joined by a man who bought a new mic, as the old one made him sound like Peter Beardsley. It's Blanners. But
it turns up tomorrow. Yeah,
that joke's sort of ruined. Unfortunately, Tim can't be here, so he's our Darren Anderton for this evening. But we are absolutely honoured and privileged to be joined by a video game designer, a video game programmer, a double golden joystick winner, a Game of the Year winner, a mathematician, a musician, a singer-songwriter, a podcaster, a streamer, and anyone who knows anything about football games will know this man. It's the actual living legend. It's Dino Dini. Welcome, Dino. Thanks very much.
Welcome.
Absolutely.
Welcome.
That's intro of the year by a long shot there. Well done.
Let me just make a note of that. Officially intro of the year. Thank you. No, thank you. It's fantastic. I know this has taken us quite a long time, because I think we messaged you last year. I think it was.
I'm really bad at following up on these. So
no,
I think this is the first one. I think it's the first one I've done.
Oh, wow.
Like a live stream thing.
Even more
live stream.
So thank you so much. So we'll have a quick look at who's in the chat. So we have RGR Ryan. We got our probably a number 1 or number 2 fan. I'm not sure about him or Nick, but it's Rob. So good evening, Rob. And we have Nintendo as well. So it should be a good one. It will be a good one. So let's get straight into it. So Dina, how did your programming career start?
Well, I suppose you could say it was a matter of timing. I started off interested in electronics when I was young, because my father was an electronics engineer. And so I was messing around building things that I suppose had some form of like autonomousness to them, if that is even a word. So, playing with electric motors and making electronic circuits and stuff like that. And then when I was about 13 or so, that's around the time that home computers became a thing for the first time. So it was perfect timing. And one of the problems of trying to build stuff out of hardware is it's a lot of work. There's a lot of, you need tools, and there's no undo, operation. Programming, I thought that this has got to be easy in comparison, right? So, in a way it is, in a way it isn't. And that I was interested in continuing that way. So I bought, first of all, I started off trying to build my own computer using a 60 6800 microprocessor, and then the Acorns. I didn't succeed in finishing that, but the Acorn System 1 came out, which was like a 6502 1 megahertz, 1K of RAM, and you programmed it in hex.
So
And,
1K of RAM. Wow.
1K, that's 1K of RAM.
Okay.
Wow.
1K. It's amazing what you could do in 1K. I mean, sort of one of my favourite games ever. I'm not going to say it because it's on my list, but it was in 8K. So you could do quite a bit, but 1K is pretty tight.
Yeah.
But and it only had a calculator display on it. It wasn't even you can plug it into the TV or anything. So I would make games on that.
Wow.
But that's how I started out. And then as the different computers became more advanced, I went from there to the Acorn Atom, and then from after that the BBC Micro, and then there was kind of university, and then after university it was the Atari ST, Commodore Amiga, and so on. So yeah, that's how I started. Started like many of us. I wasn't the only one. This was a phenomenon at the time. At school, I remember there must have been at least half a dozen of us working on computers, home computers, and trying to make video games. So it was a bit of a phenomenon of the time.
Yes, because I heard that you actually not recently, but a while back, bought a Acorn One off eBay, and you tried.
I did.
Again. Yeah,
I did. I bought. Yeah, it was literally the one that was shown on the Wikipedia article for the Acorn System 1. I found out after I bought it, because you could see it in the photograph. And I had to restore it because it had a blown LED segment on the little display. But I only succeeded in restoring that about a year ago. I was briefly streaming with it to actually make a game on it. But I stopped streaming. You can't do everything. So maybe I'll pick that up again at some point.
I think you should. We'd definitely watch that. But yeah, because I obviously we've done some research into you, and I found that out, and I was like, oh, that's quite interesting. So, but you didn't you make a game? Was it Astro Tracker?
Wow, yes, Astro Tracker was BBC Micro. It was my first commercial, purely assembly video game, I guess, because the first games that I sold were on the Acorn Atom Magic Book for the Acorn Atom, and that's I like to joke that's my Fly Fishing by J.R. Hartley. Was looking for that, but then Wonders of eBay actually have a couple of copies of this book. But they were kind of like type in. There was the type in listings, right? So you type those in from the book. But the first proper release, I suppose, would be Astro Tracker. That was published by Bebug, and that's all machine code, assembly. And I remember it was one of the tricky things with it. It was quite complicated as compared to previous ones. It had to be built in 3 parts because there really wasn't enough memory in the BBC Micro to store all of the source code. Okay. So I could only store 1/3 of the source code. I managed to break. So I broke it into 3 parts that I would then link together manually. I had some mechanism. I don't remember how I actually did the linking now. It's so long ago. But basically, this was on cassette tape as well. You can imagine that. Yeah. So if I wanted to work on the graphics, I would have to sort of load the graphics off we'd save whatever I was working on and then load it off tape. And it was really, really slow. But it's one of the weird things is that I kind of learned over the years. You'd think that would slow you down, but it's actually the real bottleneck is thinking. So although it sounds as though it's going to slow you down, in fact it doesn't slow you down that much, because while the thing is loading and saving to tape and so on, it was you're thinking about it. And even the task of breaking the code down into 3 sort of modular units which were probably, one is the glue, was more than likely was the glue and the user interface and so on. Then there would have been the graphics, and then there would have been the gameplay probably. Just doing that was really educational because it helped me sort of get a sense of software architecture.
Yeah.
But
Any of the games that you worked on in school, did you manage to keep any of those, or were they all sort of lost to time and cassette tapes?
some are lost.
Some,
almost all of them survived. Believe it or not. There are some. There's one I have some floppy disks, the 5 1/4 inch floppy disks, and it's one of the jobs I have is to see if I can restore the data off those. This is for the BBC Micro. It's possible that one game I would really love to get back is somewhere in there, but otherwise is lost. But that one was a kind of a clone of Phoenix, the arcade game Phoenix, and it was that was quite interesting. That was for the Atari 400, 800. And it was never published. But a lot of the games that I did were published. So all of the ones in the Acorn Atom Magic book, they were also released that was published by a company called Time Data, and they also released them on cassette. And I've since got them all back because believe it or not, they're Acorn Atom. There are people archiving the original content.
Yeah,
and even a game called Latency, although the name was changed, the publisher didn't like the fact that you went around collecting letters. So this is a very early lesson of publishers and how they're terrible often. It's like the game was very simple. It's like you had a ship that sort of ran around like an asteroid ship, but you couldn't stop it, and it could fire, and you had to collect letters in a correct sequence in alphabetical order, and you did that to refuel, and if you ran out of fuel there'd be a problem, and if you hit the wrong letter you'd blow up. And it was called Letteroids. But they hated the fact they were letters, even though they were graphical letters, and I had to change them into weird abstract shapes that made absolutely no sense and but kept the publisher happy. That exists. The hacked one actually does exist, but the original is lost, I think. So I have in mind another project, which is to take the hacked one and then reconstitute it, put it back the way it was originally intended. But we'll see if I ever get there. Right?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Hacking educational games.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean, hopefully that will be we can get hold of that in due course. So. We definitely look forward to that. So
we'll see.
No. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Well, the thing is, the problem is I've got so many different things that I'm trying to do, as you alluded to earlier. So it's really a question of what arrives first. The final, the director's cut of Letteroids, or death, really. I mean, so I can't really say at this point which will happen first, but you never know. Sorry, I digress.
No, certainly not death. Certainly not that. So, how did you make the sort of move from doing that on the Acorn to working for Anco? Was that just like a natural transition?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. When I came out of university, I was obviously looking for work. I found work at a company called Silica Shop.
Yep.
And so that's where I got introduced to the Atari 400, 800, and they lent me the equipment, or I believe they lent me the equipment. I'm pretty sure I didn't steal it, but I think I gave it back in the end. They lent me the computer so I could actually build the game, and somewhere they actually have ROMs of the game, but it's probably lost now. But anyway, I started work for them repairing Atari ST computers, basically. So and then eventually you know, in the course of doing that, I noticed there was a publisher in Sidcup, in Dartford, not too far away, and I went to see them, and I had already made video games before, and so I was thinking of going back to making video games, and so that's where I met Anil Gupta at Anco. And the first game I did for Anco is not Kickoff, it was actually a port of a game called Trivia Trove.
Okay.
Which I managed to get a copy of off eBay. That's another. I've got to try and get that back as well.
How much is that going for?
I'm sorry?
How much is that going for at the moment?
What, that game? Trivia Trove? Trivia Trove. I think I must have picked it up for, I don't know, about £6.
Okay.
If they'd known it was me and why I was interested in this very obscure game that nobody has heard of, the price would probably have shot up. But
well, surely they must have thought when they went to send it to you and they've got your name and address, they must think, Dino Dini, is that? Sure.
Yeah. Well, you see, that was before I had the clout to get my name on the cover of the box. Got my name on the box. Actually, I don't think I even got my name on the box with Kickoff and Kickoff 2, to be honest. That took a long time to get to the point where my name was on the box.
It's definitely on. It's definitely on gold. It's definitely there.
It's on gold. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and then also Dino Dini Soccer, I guess you could say that's the title. So yes, progression. It's like, eventually I got to, So with Dino Dini's Kickoff Revival, which was in part a mouthful to avoid any possible contention over the name Kickoff. That's the reason why that was done, not some kind of ego trip thing. But it wasn't the first time. It wasn't the first time that I had my name in it. But I believe that's a topic we could talk about in a bit. About the name, authors of games and names, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. We're definitely going to touch on that. In due course. So what got you into making football games? Were you a big fan of football or sports?
No.
Oh, right. I was expecting
not at all.
Expected.
Straight to the
Not
chase.
at all. Yeah, no. This is the standard line I troll out. I've been pulling out for like 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, a long time. But the thing is that let's be realistic here. It's true that I'm of Italian origin in that both my parents are Italian.
Yep.
Okay, and so we all know that Italy is they do the best football in the world, right? Well,
Everybody else.
that's the dream anyway. So if you ask them in Italy, they will say that. But if you look at the actual performance, it's probably not true. But then you ask the British, and they will say, or English, say England's the best. Everybody thinks they're the best, right? Problem is that I and therefore an immigrant or from an immigrant family, right? This didn't bode well for my life at school. I mean, so these days it's kind of interesting. It's these days, people that there's a bit more of an awareness about different kind of lifestyles, different cultures, color of skin, sexual orientation, whatever, right? There's a little more aware, and obviously there's also some major resistance that come in the form of people who've invented a word that, like the word woke, which will probably go out of fashion and be replaced by something else, but before long. But the thing is that back then, so this would be growing up in the early 70s, it really wasn't. It was harder. So people see me and immediately assume I'm a white privileged male, but in actual fact I was from an immigrant family and I grew up with a very obvious weird name. And so what this meant is that I never really integrated into society, into the society of school very well. And basically that meant I hated sport, to get to the cut to the chase. because sport was a team activity. I was the one who was always picked last. It's like it was really, it was that thing. And so for that reason, I had absolutely no interest in football whatsoever. So that's more detail than I normally go into, but it might be of interest, right? That's why. And so no, not really much. I'd say the family, my parents and I and my sister, we'd always watch the World Cup, because they always would, and of course, because then there's also Italy. But so I would have watched that, and so I had a good awareness about what the football game, what football is. But I wasn't never really following English football, British football. I wasn't following it. I didn't support anyone, and I really couldn't play it at all. So that's why. So no, I went to after Trivia Trove, the conversion of Trivia Trove, I said to Anno, okay, I'm ready to do the next thing. And he just brought up football games. He said the football games that are out there, they're not really very good. And, maybe you can do better. So I went and, did some research to make sure that, the thing would run fast enough, basically. I mean, would I be able to, an Atari ST, have a scrolling pitch and the characters running around? I had to do some real hacks on the Atari ST. There's no grass, for example. It's just to keep the thing moving, fast and so on. But I said, I think I can do it. So I did it, and about 15 months later, so I started on the 1st of January 1988.
Wow!
So that's actually when I first started. And I did it in a complete vacuum, in the sense that I didn't go out there playing other football games. I really didn't have much interest in football. In fact, when Anil said it, I was kind of like, my heart sank. I said, football, really?
Football, God.
And it's just like, with the context of everything I just said, it's like, great. The person who's always picked last at school, is now going to work on a team sports game. Yeah, wonderful. I wanted to do a space game, but anyway, I did a football game. 15 months later, it was released, and it was weird what happened at that point. And life was never the same again, unfortunately. But
because I remember playing. Because I had a Commodore 64, and I can only remember playing, I think it's International Soccer, which was a cartridge game you put in the back of the Commodore 64.
Is that the one with, was Emlyn Hughes International Soccer?
No, that was, no, it was just called
There
International
was an
Soccer.
Emlyn Hughes one as well. I never played it, but I just remember the name.
I think it's probably just a carbon copy of it, but obviously for legal reasons they can't call it that.
Sure.
But it was
Sorry, go.
That's right. One of these games where the pitch is a side view. The pitch was tiny.
Yeah.
The footballers were like that. The ball, literally, if you could flick it up, and if you got it on your head, you could run the whole length of the pitch with the ball bouncing on your head, and you couldn't get tackled. So I remember playing Kickoff, and I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure it came out before Microprose Soccer.
Oh yeah. It was Micropro. I think Microprose Soccer. I believe I started development of Kickoff before Microprose Soccer.
Yeah.
There's an old some kind of argument that goes on about the timing. I'd never seen Microprose Soccer, but the timing was bad for them because they had been working on a game. I came out with Kickoff, and it rather took the wind out of their sails, and perhaps is part of the motivation of what will come trundling down the line a few years later. But
because I remember Microprose, because basically the ball it's just glued to your foot. You got the ball and you just run diagonal and scored. So, but I just remember Kickoff being completely different. So, did you actually aim for it to be completely different to any other sports games at the time? Not that you were a football fan, of course, but did you? Because I think remember if you booted the ball, for example, it went up and then it went down. Did you try and make it a bit unique in that sort of style? Well,
it's interesting. It's like I never designed games deliberately seeking out source material for inspiration for the game.
Yeah, yeah.
So some of my early games were definitely inspired by the games I was playing on my BBC Micro, for example. Right? So it's absolutely. And there are games on, like one that will come up later when I give my list. See, you already know. I know you've already got that one down.
I have
on my list. So, so but I didn't go. The point is that they would come to me. You could look at it like that. The games that I would play, they would come to me in effect, and then I would just not. So when it came to figuring out how to do a football game, I really did not look at other football games, except one thing, which was that I was literally at Anco, and they were playing a game. So again, I didn't search it out; it was there, and it sounded very much like the one you just described.
Yes.
So what it was is viewed from the side, really large sprites, and so on. As you said, I'm not going to go say it all again, but I was looking at that, and I'm going. I already had in my mind a kind of rubric of what I believed would be good game design, and I'm saying they wanted big sprites. They've got big sprites, but big sprites mean that the camera is really, in effect, zoomed in. You can't really see anything. You can't see what you are doing. The pitch is also then really small, because if you were even zoomed in that far and you had the pitch to scale, the pitch would become really huge beyond the means of this type of graphic display. You would need right. So what they've done is they squeezed it into, in effect, a tiny box just for show, and it's really one step above playing, I don't know, with a card game almost. I don't know if that's the right way of putting it, right? But it's always and so I said I don't want to do that. I want to simulate football.
Yeah.
And as I tell my students as well, one of the most important things when you design a video game is figure out the scale. Number one, you figure out the scale and the camera, right? And I used to say this all the time to my students, but I don't know if they were paying attention, because I'm not just making that up. There's my money where my mouth is. That was exactly where I started. In fact, that test that I did, that I mentioned, the feasibility test that I did, was literally the pitch of the right size, to make sure that I could, and where the camera would be, as a proof that it would work in that way. And so what I wanted to do was make it to scale, and that's exactly what I did. So the sprites are, close to scale on an actual pitch. I went and found the dimensions of the pitch. Well, they vary, so I took the middle, and then I made it multiple of 12 and 16. So the closest multiple of 12 and 16. Why? Because we were 12 yards, it's like, but also 16 for pixels.
Yeah.
So it was, so the scale comes from that, and then it had to be top down, and the reason was because, in my argument, because I wanted people to be able to aim their shots, and aiming the shots is going to be easier if you do it top down, and so it went like that. So it's not so much would I set out to make a game that was completely different. It's more a case of start with the fundamentals, start with what's important. It's important that the pitch is the right size to the players, and it's also important that it's football. There's a second point.
Yeah.
As in, it's not handball, carry ball. The ball is detached from you. Yeah. And so if anybody wants a tip on how to do something like that, if you really are, insane enough to want to try and create something like this, I actually don't recommend it, but you go to the fundamentals of the thing that you are trying to emulate or recreate, and find what its core is. And so its core with football, definitely the ball is not attached to you, right?
But from my memory, it was one of the first games where it wasn't attached to you, so and I just remember it being super fast as well.
Yeah.
So you'll pass it and that ball will go flying up. You'll take a shot and it'll be going a million miles an hour. So you've got to keep concentrating all the time. You can't switch off for a second. Whereas on that Commodore 64 football game, it was so slow. You'll boot the ball and it'll be like boop, like that. It's like it's in slow motion. So you made is it Player Manager?
Yeah.
As well, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't you the world's very first person to make a game where you can be a manager and a player at the same time?
I think so.
Yeah.
I believe so, but I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. I hate to say it because there's always someone's going to pop up. Like, for example, Aftertouch, the old swerve shot, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, as far as I know, yeah. Why? Thank you. That's one game I am working on is Beard Simulator 2022. Sorry, I got distracted there with the message. What was I saying? Player manager. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna say you are the world's first, so that's official in my book. You are the world's first person to do that.
Did you? I've got a story to tell about that. While I was in America, EA released a football game. I don't remember what it was called, but they released a football game that was management and the action game together. They actually did that probably late 90s, and in their advertising they said that it was the world's first.
No, it's not.
No, it wasn't.
No.
Sure, there was one on a PS1 early on called Player Manager as well, I remember. So
You had no way.
It's weird. It's weird, but you can't argue with EA. You just can't. You know, whatever they say is true.
Yeah, well,
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah. As long as you say allegedly, you're covered.
I mean, people have tried, haven't they? I think in the past to argue with EA. I don't know quite what it does. I think in the modern terms of football games, I think arguing with EA is they remove the word FIFA from your game, and that's kind of where they're at now. So it's going to be an interesting development because I much like yourself, I'm not actually massively into football. My exposure to football games is generally from these guys here, which is always great fun to actually play a sports game that is good fun, which, you know, of course yours are. I've never been particularly, you know, enjoyed FIFA or anything like that because I actually found that it kind of took the fun out of it for, you know, but the games that are a bit more fast and a bit more interesting, a bit more fun, they have that going for them. But it's going to be interesting to see how these games develop forward because EA have said that they're going to plow on. They are going to keep making a football game. It's going to be called like EA Soccer or something, and it's basically going to be FIFA but without the name.
it won't be a football game, it'll be a microtransaction game.
Yeah,
that's what it will be. That's all they care about now.
They just want to get money, don't they? Let's face it.
But then FIFA have said that they're, or whoever owns the word FIFA, they're going to be making a new FIFA game, but with a new developer. So it's not going to be FIFA. So EA are going to have FIFA, but it's going to be called something else, and FIFA are going to have a FIFA game that's not going to be FIFA.
Well,
and the surprising reveal is it's not me.
I was going to say, Dini's FIFA.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Oh yes,
we'll see what happens. Dini's.
Good suggestion.
Let's get it done.
Yeah, make it work.
It should be. So yeah, then you went on to Kickoff 2, which is an actual amazing game. So was it more difficult to make Kickoff 2 as opposed to the first Kickoff? So
well, there's a lot more UI in Kickoff 2, right? Because the original Kickoff was very bare bones. It was more like Kickoff Revival actually, in you know, that it didn't have a lot of menus and stuff like. It was actually, you know, it's not a lot of different kind of competitions involved in it and so on. But Kickoff 2 had a huge number of, you know, additional menus, options. The squad select screen, you know, being able to, you know, handling the substitutions and so on, being able to change the formations. I pulled stuff out of Player Manager. So for Player Manager, being able to edit the formations, which again, I don't know, it must be one of the first games that did that. I don't know if the first, but it certainly, and it's been copied a few times. But that was Player Manager was therefore also a tool for developing the formations that went into Kickoff 2. And then I had the idea that you could actually load them from Player Manager. So it's like, you know, there's lots of stuff going on there. But it was still, though, an evolution, right? So whereas it took 15 months to actually make the core kickoff game, I think it only took me about 6 months to do Player Manager.
Yeah.
And then probably about another 6 months on top of that to do Kickoff 2. Most of the work was boring user interface work, actually. And that's actually hard. To get the user interfaces done can take longer than the rest of the game.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think if you were to ask anybody that isn't a games developer, you know, what do you think the hardest part of the game is for something like that, I'd imagine they probably would say, the mechanics of that. Whereas in fact the user interface, that's arguably one of, I mean, yes, the game has to play like a game of football, but you know, the UI, that's the thing that kind of gets you there. And that's, you know, if that's hard to navigate, hard to use, not easy on the eye, too cumbersome, too overclouded, it just ruins the experience before you've even started. So that's interesting that you've raised that.
Well, a lot of games in the 90s, I remember, had photos instead of or pictures for the user interface when you were navigating the menu and things. And I imagine that was because of the European market, and it was just easier to do it that way.
So how do you mean by pictures? You mean icons?
Yeah, so when you're navigating the menu, instead of it saying kickoff, it would have a picture of a football, or it would.
There's a huge thing with that, because it's still a problem now. People take for granted localization as being, you know, people don't think about that. The actual work that's involved in making sure that the user interface it works, it looks all right, it's understandable, and it copes with different languages, it's actually a nightmare. So I mean, in Kickoff 2 and Player Manager, those games were translated into 5 different languages, and so to help with this, so how do you do that? Is because one thing you could use icons for everything, which answers your question, right? So if you use icons, then you don't need to translate them. The problem is that then nobody understands what they mean. You translate them in the instruction manual that nobody reads. So what I think these days you can go with, I'm quite a fan of use an icon and also have a pop-up or a tilt tip or whatever, and people make the association and they just come to remember the shape against whatever the thing is. But then you still have to translate these. So what I did was make a system for the UI that would automatically format the text within a box. And we take all of this for granted. You go and sort of design anything in a whatever tool, you know, for doing diagrams, and you see it automatically adjust and wrap the text. You don't even think about it. But I had to actually write everything to do that, so that then when the language changed and you have different text in there, it will actually format automatically. So it needed to do that dynamically because of the languages. But then what happened was German. So the problem, I'd make the code so it would go and look at where it can do the break, the line break, so not break a word in the middle. And then you get German. And so German has words this long, single word this long. Where do you put the break? So it becomes a nightmare. Yeah, it's a nightmare. It's like you play, and it's a word this long. It's like, and they do not like abbreviations. They really don't like it when you put an abbreviation in.
Wow.
So I've been told maybe they've softened up now, but I don't know. So yeah, what do you do? Anyway, the point then is that you could end up having to completely redesign an entire menu screen just because of the problems presented by trying to deal with different languages. And it's tough.
What about the box art? Did you have any say on the box art at all? Because some of them are iconic. No, never in my entire career have I really had any control of the box art. I mean, so, you know, Anil Gupta just decided what went on the box. And I did make an attempt, ironically, with the 2 that you have back there. Yeah. I literally said to the publisher, put anything on the box except a red person, someone in a red shirt, and someone in a blue shirt running down the pitch. And so they absolutely delivered that.
Yeah.
Shirt off, Gordon.
Well,
yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. Who the hell did I think I was?
I don't know who it is, but I think that looks like Man United. I've got a feeling that might be a Man United player because it's
Looks like Andrei Kanchelskis.
yeah,
He's got the flowing locks.
yeah. But yeah, that's my original copy of Goal. It's my favourite game that you made.
It is. Oh,
Yeah,
That-
I played this loads when I was a kid, so it is my favourite. And one of the features, I know it was in Kickoff 2, but one of my favourite features where you could save your goal replays.
yeah.
So I love that feature. Again, I think it's probably the world's first time you can do that in a football.
Quite possibly.
It's official.
I think I'm going to say it's official. It's official.
Branded by the
But yeah, I've got I was going to say an interesting story, but it's not really interesting. But my copy, because I played it so much, it got corrupted, and
the backup.
no.
Were you after a refund, Dorbs?
Well,
I'm not
funny
the
you should-
person to speak to about that, by the way.
It's time.
funny you should say that because yeah, my copy got corrupted. So back in the days where you could send stuff via the post, I sent them a letter with a copy of the disc, and they actually responded. So Virgin actually responded to me. Now, unfortunately,
Wow.
there's not the date on the letter. What I can do is I can scan that and email that to you. There's no date on that letter, unfortunately, but basically they just apologised and sent me a new copy. So I've actually got a Gold
Amazing.
version 1.1, and
Right.
and because of their little muck-up, I've actually got two booklets. They actually sent me another booklet.
Oh,
So yeah, I've got two of those. So yeah, I think it's probably I'm taking that as DLC.
yeah.
DLC before
Yeah.
DLC.
It's the world's first
DLC.
game with DLC officially.
Well, we did expansion discs.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was also you could call that DLC. You had to have the original game and the expansion with it.
Yeah.
So it was it's good old days indeed.
Yeah. But Goal was my favourite because, like I said, it was a game that I played quite a lot. I actually loved it, and I think I realised how good it was when you got the loading screen up and it come up with the game title, and then it said sponsored by Adidas, and it's like wow. Because obviously, when you're a kid, you dream to have Adidas trainers. I had to wear Gola and stuff like that. But Adidas trainers, it's like wow. So I loved Goal. That was my personal favourite. So yeah, thank you for making that. It was.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah, so it's just so cool because we're speaking to yourself. We made arguably one of my favourite Amiga football games. So thank you for that. But I don't know. I don't want to go into too many details about this because the story is on your website. But at school, there between kids at school, there was factions. You had your Kickoff 2 faction, and you had your Sensible Soccer faction. I was sort of in the middle, lucky enough.
Yeah.
So I didn't get beat up or anything like that. But I think the press made sort of a bit of a battle between Kickoff 2 and Sensible Soccer, and it was sort of brought out of all proportions, bloody blah, and then didn't I think it was Amiga Power, I'll say allegedly in case I'm wrong, but I'm sure it was Amiga Power that printed a fake letter from you,
Yeah.
which is
Wow.
disgraceful.
Yeah. That Scottish games journalist.
Yeah, I
don't know if you get the joke. Do you get the joke when I say the Scottish James? Because if you're for those who don't know, if you're in the theatre, you call a particular play by Shakespeare that Scottish play because it's bad luck to utter the name of the play. So I call him the Scottish journalist. So that's where that comes. So he was, it was a horrible thing, and you just bring it up, and I immediately, I get a physical reaction from it, because the problem with it was this, that over the years I developed a reputation, which it grew on in the end on the internet, right? When it got there, but it actually started before, and the funny thing was that there I was. I had, as you say, 2 Golden Joystick Awards,
Yeah, yeah.
So Kickoff and Kickoff 2, it's not an easy thing to achieve, right? Incidentally, if you go and check the Golden Joysticks Awards site, last time I checked it, they don't even list these. I'm not listed those years for some reason.
What?
It's really weird.
That's mad.
Maybe they fixed that now. I don't know. But this is the thing. It's like being gaslit.
Yeah.
So in a way, I've been gaslit by the industry. It's one way of putting it. The whole caboodle, not just the industry, but also, I don't know, gamers of social, cancel culture that is now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm such an innovator. I am such an innovator. I got myself cancelled with no effort back in the early 1990s, before cancel culture was even a thing, because I knew the danger of getting too embroiled in the media, so I kept a low profile. And I kept a low profile because I knew that it could turn nasty. So what did they do? The whole system. I mean, you draw your own conclusions on how this could come about. That letter that they published was the first alleged message from Dino Dini to the world.
Yeah.
And so I liken it to this, that basically you try and do your best.
Yeah.
Right? To do the right thing. But the monster, as I call it, will do whatever it likes. And if you're not going to engage and play, you'll get dragged into it. And it is a lesson then. Don't try to hide. If you ever find yourself in this situation, don't do what I did and try to say, no, I'm going to not, engage in all of this media stuff because I just want to carry on making the games and be pure bullshit. Because if you do that, the thing will drag you in whether you like it or not, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And you can imagine the trauma that kind of caused, and I've never really recovered from it.
No.
So
it's disgraceful. For me, the press. Well, we know we got opinions on the press, but they can print like a massive, say, a front page tabloid accusing Mr. A of XYZ, and then 2 weeks later they post an apology, which is like a postage stamp on page 27,
exactly.
and it's disgraceful. So, thank you for that. Thank you for talking about that so open and honestly. But yeah, it was absolutely disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful.
I should have sued them. I wish I had.
Yeah.
I wish I had, but it's easy to say, but it's like, well, there you are. There's the lesson learned.
Yeah, but mate, I think in this day and age, you would have sued them.
Yeah, wouldn't have hesitated.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
Because now I know what the consequences are of not. If anybody's wondering about the consequences of not standing up for yourself, so.
Well, like I said, we think you're a legend, so ignore what Amiga Power and that Scottish journalist, ignore that. I was going to say a very rude word there, but I won't. So what we do now is we go to our cheesy Manscaped ad. So this is very, very cheesy. So maybe you can give us a rating once you've watched it.
No, don't rate it.
It's gonna laugh.
Here we go.
Support at Retro Gaming Revival is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision engineered tools for your family jewels, and Manscaped's performance package is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 4 million men worldwide who have trusted Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off, and that includes free worldwide shipping with the code RGR at manscaped.com. And if my maths is correct, that's about 8 million balls.
The Performance Pack 4.0 has arrived, and it is a game changer. Inside the box you will find the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear, nose and hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, Performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to carry all those goodies with you.
Manscaped sent everyone on the RGR team the Performance Pack 4.0, and at risk of giving too much information away, I can say this is a great package. All the products are made with a really great finish to them, and you can really tell that Manscaped are trying to change the way that we talk about men's hygiene. So, after all that, it's time for you to take care of yourself now by using code RGR
at manscaped.com for 20% off and free worldwide shipping. And as the box says, your balls will thank you.
Doesn't get any easier to watch that, does it? Jesus.
Cringy, that's so cringy.
It just saves having to read it out every time. But there we go.
Yeah.
Gold tooth plums are like silk.
I'm glad I didn't do it, put it that way.
Well, somebody had to.
Yeah.
Somebody had to. 3, that's generous. I'll take that. 3 out of 10.
Okay. Okay. Right. So sorry about that, Dino. But yeah, we had to quickly do a.
Businesses. You've got to take care of businesses.
Yeah. So what would you say was the best console or computer to program for?
Oh, that's hard.
Best and easiest.
That's almost impossible to answer. When I tried programming the Acorn System 1, it was fun. It's not a lot of fun anymore.
No.
There is something about it. I think the early technology that we had something very immediate about it. It's like you to have an Acorn System 1. Do you know how long it takes an Acorn System? Sorry, Acorn System 1, an Acorn Atom. You know how long it takes an Acorn Atom to boot? I have an actual video of the Acorn Atom boot up process on my YouTube channel. Wow. So how long does it take for an Acorn Atom from when you turn it on to when you can start typing?
3 minutes. Am I warm or cold?
You're way off. It's basically instant. You can't measure it. It's like you turn it on. It's like, there you are, boom. Oh. We don't have that anymore. It's like, I don't know, but my phone drives me nuts because I try to do anything with my phone, and it's like I feel like I'm cast back to the days of loading something off cassette tape. It feels like that. It's like, I like to joke about the fact that there's a new form of prayer, a faith thing. It's like you press the button on your phone, and it doesn't respond. It doesn't say anything. It just does nothing.
Yeah.
And you have to have faith that it was registered, and you have to hold the phone like this, or rather like that, I suppose. But you know what I mean. Yeah. And you're waiting for it to come back. It's the new religion. I don't know. It's not fun. It's not fun anymore. Something is in the immediacy is lost. It's latency, and this has an issue. This covers everything. It covers the gameplay itself. Your retro gaming, right? Yeah. Do you know what the biggest problem is for recreating the retro gaming experience? Technological issue with it. It's input lag.
Okay.
On the monitor. So if you take a game like Pong and you put it on a TV that has 100 milliseconds of input lag, you can't play it. It's unplayable. Yeah. The 10-second delay, the 10th of a second delay that exists between you moving the control, which then there were analog controls that literally did this, right, on there. It would make the game unplayable. So what's happened is that games are now designed to work with the lag. So that's one reason why they don't feel like the retro games. But it's worse than that. If you take a game and run it on an emulator, you need to make sure that your display has a very low input lag. If you want to recreate the timing that you had on a CRT screen, which was less than 20 milliseconds.
That's unbelievable.
Is this something that anyone ever talks about? Sorry, I'm getting very nerdy here. No, right, okay. Well, I tell you, if you wondered why it doesn't feel the same, that's probably why. People actually go back to try and play the game on the original hardware. And the people will say, "Oh, it's nostalgia." No, it isn't. It's not at all. It's the only way you can be sure that it's actually the timing between what you do and what you see is the same as the original. Right? It's a big thing. When I was doing Kickoff Revival, this is where the scales fell from my eyes on this one, because I was
I actually constructed a piece of electronics, to a little light sensor stuck on the screen to measure the delay. And the delay was over 1/10 of a second. And I was just, you should have seen my face when I realized this. It was like, what? And that's why the game, when I was playing it at the time, it felt a little kind of soupy, is what I would say. So something was lagging behind. And I had to hack a solution to reduce. I got it down to 50 milliseconds, which is still manageable, but that's still twice what it was.
Wow.
And so even then, it's like people say to me, why couldn't you have just redone Kickoff? It's actually not technically possible.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's insane. I don't think
Yeah,
anyone
never
has
knew that.
ever talked about that before. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Right.
It's another
Yeah, you think
element to the-
Go on, sorry.
Sorry, yeah, no, I was going to say it's just another element to the process that you just don't really hear about, or even, well, certainly from my side as a consumer, I certainly don't think about it. It's the sort of thing that would probably quite interest my son, because he's at university at the moment, studying video game design, and just that kind of thing I think would really interest him, because he doesn't really play too many old games, and any of the old games he does, he gets off of Steam, because his sort of generation of the full digital generation now. I'd imagine he'd probably find that fascinating, because that's just a factor I just have never thought of.
Yeah, you're generally okay with computer monitors, because they usually have probably 11 milliseconds maybe delay, and then you're down to the ballpark of it being okay. But the scary thing is that people play their games on their TVs in their living rooms.
Yeah.
Who knows how old the model is? And TVs have got all the circuitry in them, all this video processing to make them look, better than, what are they trying to make them look? They already, whatever is being transmitted is what you're supposed to see. So it's kind of like making it shinier. I don't know. But one of the effects of it is it introduces a delay. So your TV has a mode specifically to turn that off. And when you turn that off, the input lag is called game mode. So game mode, you might think game mode, it just changes the colors. I say, no, it doesn't. What it does is it reduces the input lag. Wow. Interesting, nobody talks about this. But if you go do some research, if you think I'm being nuts about this, go do some research on it. You'll see that this is totally for real. So make sure that you have your TV set to game mode to keep the input latency as low as possible when you're playing your emulated games, because it's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah,
unless you're
Sorry.
Go on. I was saying unless you're playing Monkey Island, in which case it probably doesn't matter.
Hands up, hands up. I thought game mode was just basically to play video games on. I never knew it was anything to do with the input lag. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing. So obviously you've made some very iconic games, but what was the favourite game you worked on? Which I got a feeling I might know this one.
My favourite game I worked on would be the game that I'm proudest of. So that has to be Player Manager.
Yeah.
Just because in 1990 I managed to do something that hadn't been done before, and it was really 2 games in one, and it was a huge challenge of tuning, because balancing the economy of the 2,000 players and all of the managers playing and so on. It was a huge simulation, which I managed to tune to the point that it worked well enough. It wasn't perfect, but it worked well enough. It was able to run for 30 years and still remain stable. It started to go weird after 30 years. It's sort of like all the managers. I remember all the managers were just sort of like not bothering to completely refill their squads. They would work on a reduced squad, and I bet in the end you have to call it quits at some point, because the way I would tune that is I would have the game matches being played automatically between all of the managers, all of the AI, and it would print the results out a bit like the old, I don't remember the teletype on Grandstand or whatever, Partick Thistle 4, Wolverhampton Wanderers 3, but it would basically be printing that out, and I would let it run overnight, and I'll come back and there would be a listing like that, and so then I'll do the analysis, which literally was going with a pen
and going, okay, so this happened and that happened, and then, oh, this looks a bit suspicious. Why did this manager just sell this player that he bought the previous week? Or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so I'm proudest of that, because I managed to, with nothing but a dot matrix printer and, none of the facilities that we have today, and very limited memory, not even a hard disk.
Yeah.
I didn't even have hard disk, and I managed to tune this really complex simulation, and then the result that came out afterwards, that people loved the game, and they were playing the game they would play their manager until their manager became 127, and then the bit would flip, and then they'd become negative age. They would actually clock.
Like the
goes into Benjamin Button.
So I've got to be proudest of that, I think.
Yeah. It is a great game. I've just seen that James Jarvis, it's much more. Still got my player manager mini boxes on the Amstrad. Great games and well done. So, fantastic stuff. So, just want to touch on this briefly, if I may. The Amiga 500 Mini. Now, I've got mixed feelings about this, which, we'll discuss this afterwards. But I've got mixed feelings on the whole Amiga 500 Mini, because I'm a massive Amiga fan, but I'm not too sure. But is it true that the Amiga 500 Mini has got Kickoff 2 on it? But is it true that you've received no payment for that whatsoever?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Because the first thing is that if we were to go down to the letter of the agreement, Kickoff 2 was done with a royalty. So if I was to take it and win the case, I would be able to claim royalty payment. The problem is that, and then from then also rights, presumably. But the problem is that when Anco and I parted ways, there's a thing about Anil Gupta, is that he wouldn't sign contracts. So it's like, it was a very cowboy era. This kind of thing wouldn't happen anymore. But there is, I have no means, and I don't even have the will to do it.
Yeah.
Right. But if we were to actually look at what it would be from a legal point of view, with my understanding of the law, subject to the fact that I'm not a lawyer, I'm expressing merely an opinion here. And it would make sense, because since it's my creation, right?
Yeah.
But let's say that the other party probably view it as they bought the stuff off Anco when Anco closed down. And so in their minds, they have bought the rights to everything, which I disagree with. But how would I? How could I actually do anything about it?
Yeah. It's shocking, really.
It wouldn't happen anymore. It wouldn't. No. But the way think about it is that way back then, making a game like that, it was a bit like being an author of a book, because that was the only model that we had to go on. So I was in effect an author. There are some people who kind of criticized me for saying I made the game by myself. Well, it's true, I did. I mean, I designed the game and I coded the game by myself. And there was a publisher, and the publisher provided feedback and advice. So you can also say, no, it's not entirely only me, because there was a publisher, but just the same way as it is with books. Like, it's still the author's creation, and that's why it has their name on it. Right? It's really simple. People can understand that. So what's actually happened in this case is the book has been published even without my name on it. It's like, how can it, right? But that's, this I think is a legal issue that has never been settled in the industry as a whole. And the whole industry moved into a model where you don't even know who worked on the games until you look at the credits. So it's no longer the authorship model doesn't really apply unless you're an independent game developer. But when was the last? Go on. Sorry.
Well, hopefully, justice will prevail, and then you will get some sort of payment. Because
How?
maybe they'll have
How?
maybe they'll get a conscience, get a conscience.
So I tell you, there's lots of things that are in short supply in the industry, and there definitely isn't an overabundance of conscience. I can tell you that.
There should be, because, you should. It's your creation. You should get the rewards for it. 5, 10, 50 years down the road, you should still get those rewards because it's yours. It's your baby, basically. So,
I would not disagree with that, but in practice, it's not like that.
No.
No.
Yeah, that's shocking. But no, thank you for talking about that. But yeah, hopefully common sense will prevail in due course. But we've got a question from Mr. Jarvis, if I can find it.
I got it.
Oh, you got it. So, what game do you wish you worked on? What game do you think you wish you worked on?
That's an interesting one. What game do I wish I had worked on? Well, I mean, gosh, how to answer that? Okay.
Oh, Rick
I
Wallace.
think. Sorry, I was just thinking. What wasn't looking at the screen. What happened there?
Well, the Richard Waller, the gentleman behind Waller's Remasters, which we're going to get onto in a minute.
Oh, right.
He's just joined us. So he always seems to crop in just before Waller's Remasters, which is a bit strange. But yeah,
His Waller sense tingles.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have been on any of the classic game designers that I respect and admire. I would have loved to have been involved in any way at all back at the time when they made their games. So how about, was it Jarvis, the creator of Defender?
Okay.
I would have. If that would have been the game I would have loved to have worked on, and I would have loved to have just made the guy T. Just to be able to see him at his work, because that's one of those. That's just an utterly amazing game. That's a work of art in the extreme. Yeah,
it is cracking.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. So one more question, and then we get onto your Waller's Remasters. So, will we ever see a new Dino Dini football game?
It's unlikely at this point.
Oh.
It's unlikely because there was Indie is dead.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, we were going to mention that because has like FIFA and Pro Evolution Soccer, have they sort of killed indie football games?
Oh, well, of course. I mean, because there's so many things over the years of games that I worked on and never got published with teams, with companies. It always hit a brick wall, which nobody ever wanted to go up against EA and so on.
Yeah.
So, and then plus the fact that it's changed the expectation of a football game. I mean, I can remember one criticism of Revival was, all you do is play football. It's like, that's the flipping point.
What's the point?
It's like they couldn't.
That's
no comprehension. It's like no it's no comprehension of the whole thing of finessing your gameplay. It's not a thing anymore. I think that we've lost the audience. I don't know that we can ever get any of that back. And there isn't a business model ultimately, so that's the other side of it. It's like, what's the business model?
Yeah.
I'm still waiting to start getting royalties on Kickoff Revival.
Yeah.
It's like
it's such a shame the new generation of gamers aren't going to experience what we did, where there was loads of football games, different publishers, and you had so much choice. Now, Pro Evolution Soccer isn't even released as a physical game. It's a free download of a load of microtransactions, and then you've got FIFA, and that's it.
You could almost like extrapolate this across like not even just sports, but just certain genres of game in general now are just dominated by a particular one or maybe two big hit title, and because there's a lot of people that play these games online, you can stream it, you get a lot of viewers from it, that people don't tend to deviate from that path, because people just seem to fixate on these one or two big major franchises, and then they just skirt over all these other people who have probably got some absolutely killer ideas for just a really fun game that maybe it's not as flashy as something like FIFA or COD, but the gameplay and the mechanic is probably going to be more fun because it's just an enjoyable game. And outside of graphics and DLC and all this other kind of stuff that all these big studios throw at something, for me the core of anything is gameplay. If the gameplay is great, everything else just falls into place on top of it.
Yeah, because I personally think FIFA is just the same game every year. It's just the same game with different.
Oh, it is. I don't even play it, and I
updates,
can tell you that it is.
Yeah.
From a non-FIFA fan's perspective, when the next the new advert comes on for FIFA, whatever it is, you're like, it's just the same game, and everyone's like, oh no, but they've changed the players, they've changed it. It's like, I don't give a shit. It's just it's the same player to me. It doesn't make any difference to the gameplay whatsoever. It is the same game, and it has been the same game for decades now.
Yeah, they're not fun anymore. I'm not interested in them at all. So,
where does the fun come from in games?
Pass. Being angry at other people, probably. I think certainly in terms of FIFA, I think it's just other people shouting at other people. I have no idea, because I don't play a great deal of sports titles. The sports titles that I do tend to play would be things like racing games, and I don't play a huge amount of those. One of my favorite racing games was Horizon Chase Turbo, which basically runs exactly like Outrun did, but it's just HD and beautiful to look at. So it's just hugely inspired, but of course no one really played it. It's one of those sort of hidden gems on the PlayStation 4 that are a core pocket of people love and talk about. It's got a little bit of a fan base, and because of the low print run of the game, it's now incredibly expensive as well.
It is.
We don't seem to champion great gameplay. Like, in fact, does anybody? I know the industry doesn't. But it's the same thing. It's like music. I mean, so if you're into music, and music of the 60s compared with the pop songs of the 60s compared to pop songs of today, it's like something slips away. It's happened to games as well, really.
Yeah. Occasionally you get the two that marry together, but frequently something goes amiss in the communication between the developer and the creator and the publisher. Because it's totally off topic of sports games whatsoever, but I think one of the best franchises of recent modern gaming was BioShock, and there were three of those games, and then that was it, because Ken Levine, who wrote and created BioShock, didn't want it to go any further. He cleverly got it into his contract that if he pulled the plug, it got the plug pulled, and then ended up selling his part of 2K and parts of his rights, and now 2K are considering doing another BioShock game, and you're like, why? It was a great set of games because you gave the creator almost complete creative control to make the game he wanted. So why revisit it? It's a great series of games. Just remaster it again if we absolutely must.
Yeah.
The thing is that in other media, for example, if you're going to the cinema to watch a film, what is the single thing that you look at to have an idea of whether or not this has the potential of being a great film?
Ooh, that could determine between whether you're a cinephile or someone who just looks at the poster.
Well, I would argue, I mean, if you just look at the poster, then say that's something. But if you are a cinephile, I think, beyond the poster, right? It's surely down to who has the vision for the film. I mean, you look for the visionary behind the film, and that gives you an idea of the thing. That's what we're missing I think, in the industry. It's like it's just churning out the same patterns or similar patterns, but not going for the experience that comes from that creative thing, whatever it is. We're kind of missing that. So I think maybe what we need to do is to have a similar thing like what happened with film, in that when the studio system broke down, there was the Sundance festival, if you remember. Basically what happened was investment and interest and popularization of independent film, and then we had a huge resurgence of film, which actually was very good for the industry as a whole. We really need that. This touches on a question I want, if I may. There was one about from Dan saying, when you say indie is dead, do you mean in general? I mean in general.
Yeah.
It was looking promising after Apple and the App Store, but now it's gone. If you want to, I think anybody has an idea of making a game, an independent video game, for the purpose of even breaking even. They're dreaming, and it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how good you are. We're a desolate place as far as the creativity. And I consider myself like you would have independent filmmakers. I'm an independent game maker. I view myself in that activity the same as an independent filmmaker. That whole philosophy behind what it is that I want to do, and there isn't a means to do it. It's right now. It's sad.
It is sad.
Just before Dorbs, we move on to the next bit. I think this is almost like a key. There is a market for this, and I do believe there is a market, albeit a small market, but there is a market for indie games. And this is where something like the system, which we've talked about many times, the Evercade, this could really hone in on this, because this is a new retro system that plays old games on cartridges. And one of the best cartridges that they released was called Indie Heroes, and it is all new games made by indie developers. And the cartridge is absolutely fantastic. It is, I would say, it is their best cartridge, and they've got cartridges that have got, Interplay collections. They've got Codemasters, Atari Lynx collections, all this kind of stuff that are really cool and nostalgic. But that Indie Heroes cartridge is the best one. They're doing another one, which again people are really excited about, and a lot of people keep sort of pushing this idea to Evercade. Like, yes, it's great that you're releasing older games, but maybe let's fixate it a little bit more on the new, the new indie games, the people that are making newer games now that don't have this market, because this system is primed for that kind of thing.
That sounds interesting. I actually have to plead ignorance, believe it or not. I'm so out of it. So I will follow up on that. But that sounds good. That's anything like that that encourages an inventiveness. That spirit of independent game making as an art form, really, because I believe it is.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely is.
It's an art form.
Yeah, it is,
wonderful.
But yeah, check out Low Tech Games as well. One of our good friends, Alistair Lowe, Low Tech Games. He's made a few games as well. So Flea is brilliant. Really good game. That I really enjoyed.
And Tapeworm. Tapeworm's good as well. Yeah, they're both really addictive games, so definitely check them out.
And you can get them on the PlayStation 4 and 5. I think they're on Xbox now and Switch as well.
And Steam.
Yes, because he advertises that on his TikTok. So Low Tech Games. So check him out if you can.
Sure.
No, thank you for that. So finally, we like to end on a little homage to our good friend Rick Waller.
We need to get Rick Waller to do an intro for this, like it's Waller's Remasters.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. We'll have to message him.
He's in the chat. We'll commission you, Rick, to do this.
He is. Let's see if he puts a response. Rick, can you do an intro for us? So Waller's Remasters. We touched on it briefly earlier. So it's up to 3 retro games that you think deserve a remake or a remaster for a modern console. So what would be your 3 picks?
Didn't you guess one?
I've got some written down.
So who are you asking right now? You're asking Richard right now?
No, you.
Or... No, oh, you're asking me. Sorry. Yeah, I was just... Okay. So the first one, which I believe is the one that you will have had written down, is Star Raiders. Am I wrong? Yeah, Star Raiders.
Star Raiders, yeah.
I knew that. Yes, that's it. It's amazing. All right, Star Raiders. Should I say something about the game as well, or is it just a? Yeah. So Star Raiders was released in 1979. I actually I did a playthrough on it recently on my YouTube channel. It fits in 8K.
Runs on a console, well, it's home computer with 1 megahertz processor, 1 megahertz 6502 processor. So it's very early computing. It's just a little bit above a 2700. There's lots of interesting hardware in that machine which made it go faster, right? But that game has never been bettered. It's like, if you like games like Elite or EVE Online or the space sort of things like this, sure, the graphics are obviously, but there's stuff inside that little 8K game that has not been convincingly reproduced anywhere else. And I actually put that claim out in the video, and nobody has said I'm wrong. So I think it still stands to be the case. I could go on about it all day, but I just check out Star Raiders. And the second one I have on my list, we deviate now. The second one I have on my list is Magic Carpet. So that came out in the mid-90s. It was a Bullfrog, I think, production. It's a beautifully balanced, wonderfully imaginative, and actually quite compelling game, and it really deserves more of a legacy than it has. I know that there are some people who are passionate about that game. There is a community of people honestly, I could go on and on about why, but I would love to know who was actually responsible for that. If anybody knows who was the actual visionary behind Magic Carpet, they're one of my heroes. So, as is the person who made Star Raiders, whose name I can't remember now. Doug Nauber? Now, might be. I think it was Doug Nauber, if I remember rightly. I'm not good with names, but you'll check. But and then the other one, I did put one of mine. It's Player Manager.
Yeah.
If I was to do another football game, that's the one I've been trying to line up to be able to do. I've been trying to do a sequel to Player Manager for 30 years. Wow. So never, or is it 40, 30? It's never happened. So there we are. That's my three.
Well, we can never say never, but no, three excellent picks. I only got 1 out of 3, so because you're a mathematician, 33.33 recurring percent. So I'll take
that. Was answered very precisely. You get full marks for that reply.
No, but thank you so much. It's been absolutely wonderful to chat to you. Definitely one of my heroes, and it's been a long time coming, but we're ever so grateful for you to come on and.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and it was great fun.
Thank you. So, is there anything people can find you on Twitter or anything like that if they want to follow you on Twitter?
Oh yeah, well I've got Twitter, I've got YouTube. Just type my name in, you should be able to find me without too much trouble. Excellent. Also, I'm on Spotify as well. I'm slowly releasing my music.
Yes.
The plug for the music, so. Because that's what you do.
Yeah, no. When we do our when we release this on a podcast as well, we'll put all the links in the description as well, so people can find that out. But no, honestly, Dino, it's been absolutely wonderful to chat to you. So thank you ever so much. We are extremely grateful.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Right. So without further ado, we shall all wish you good night. You got the outro, Ryan?
Yeah, I have. It's all good to go.
Right, so we shall.
Do we want to say who we've got next week?
Or
is it a closely guarded secret?
It's a closely guarded secret. It's a close. I can't even talk. Closely guarded secret at the minute.
I will say they've got a lot to live up to because Dino, you've been excellent tonight, and people in the chat you've been described as our best guest, and we have had huge people from, or a huge number of people from the gaming community. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know what to say. It's great, and as I enjoyed it, it was good fun. And
thank you, brilliant.
Yeah, all the best, and
thank you. And
go on then, Ryan.
Good night.
Let's roll it.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.